You think you know your family until they show you their true colors in front of everyone. My story began at what should have been a happy moment, my sister Madison's engagement party. The backyard looked like something out of a magazine, covered in flowers, lights, and expensive decorations my parents clearly couldn't afford. Everyone acted like it was normal, but I knew their credit cards were probably screaming. Even then, I tried to enjoy the evening. Madison looked happy, and I wanted to support her, even if our relationship had always been uneven. But something felt off. My mother, Catherine, kept hovering around Bradley's parents, laughing too loudly, adjusting her dress, and pretending she belonged in their world. She was determined to impress them, even though they barely noticed her. I watched from across the yard, feeling that familiar tightness in my chest. Every time my mom set her eyes on me, her smile tightened. I knew I was about to be blamed for something. I just didn't know what. It happened fast. Catherine grabbed my elbow with a smile stretched too wide and whispered, "Come with me." She didn't wait for an answer. She just dragged me through the house into my father's study and closed the door. Her whole expression changed instantly. She went straight into it, no softening, no build-up. She explained that Bradley's parents had lost money recently and could no longer help with the wedding costs. Her eyes narrowed as she said it was now my responsibility to fix everything. She told me to cancel my own small wedding and hand over my savings. Every last bit of the $50,000 Aaron and I had saved together. She said it as if it were the most reasonable thing in the world. "Your sister deserves her dream wedding," she said. "You can get married anytime." I felt the floor tilt. I tried to stay calm and told her no. Aaron and I had been planning our life carefully, and our money wasn't a toy she could move around to impress people. She didn't listen. Instead, she stepped closer, her voice rising. She said I was ungrateful, selfish, and jealous of Madison. She said my life wasn't going anywhere anyway. I turned to leave, but she stormed after me, her shoes hitting the floor like warning shots. By the time we stepped into the backyard again, she wasn't whispering anymore. Everyone turned as she pointed at me and shouted that I was destroying my sister's happiness. Guests froze, staring at us. Madison looked confused, Bradley's parents uncomfortable. I tried to walk away, but Catherine followed. Then it happened, the moment everything changed. She snatched a cup of hot coffee from the drink table and threw it straight at my face. The burning hit instantly, shocking me into a scream. The whole party erupted. People shouted, someone dropped a plate, Madison gasped, and my father finally ran toward us. And in the middle of the chaos, the crowd parted, and I saw Aaron walking in, his eyes going straight to me, to my burned skin, to the mother who had just crossed a line she couldn't come back from. As the hot coffee slid down my face, I thought the shame couldn't get any worse. My skin hurt, my eyes were watering, and people were staring like they had just watched a movie scene instead of my real life. I tried to steady myself, but everything felt blurry. Then I heard footsteps rushing toward me. It was Aaron. His usual calm expression was gone, replaced with a look so cold it made everyone nearby step back. He reached me in seconds, holding my face gently but firmly, checking the burn with steady hands. I could feel his anger rising, not loud or wild, but controlled in a way that scared even me a little. He didn't yell. He didn't demand anything. He just looked at my mother with a stare that made her shift uncomfortably. Catherine immediately tried to twist the moment. She waved her hands and said I was overreacting, that it was just coffee, and I had pushed her too far by refusing to help my sister. She told the guests that I had been difficult for years, acting like she was the victim. Her voice shook, but not with guilt, more like annoyance that people weren't siding with her as quickly as she expected. Aaron kept his arm around me, but when he spoke, his voice filled the whole backyard. He didn't shout, yet everyone heard him clearly. He told Catherine to stop pretending. He said he was done watching me get blamed for everything, and that he wasn't going to let the truth stay hidden anymore. I felt my stomach drop. I knew exactly what he meant. For years I had protected my family's dignity, even when they didn't deserve it. And now, because of everything that had just happened, Aaron was about to tear down the image they tried so hard to maintain. He looked at the crowd, then at my parents, and said that I had been quietly covering their mortgage for 2 years. He explained how my dad's hours were reduced and how I stepped in so they wouldn't lose the house. He didn't say it angrily, he said it like a simple fact. But the effect was immediate. Guests froze. A couple of them even whispered to each other. The shock spread like a wave. My mother's face went blank. She hadn't expected him to reveal anything. She opened her mouth, probably to deny it, but no words came out. My father, Thomas, looked like someone had knocked the wind out of him. His eyes went wide, and he stared at me as if he had never seen me before. Finally, he asked, "Rebecca, is this true?" His voice cracked, and for a moment the noise of the party disappeared. All I could hear was that one question. I didn't want to answer. Not because I was ashamed, but because I knew the truth would break whatever was left of our old family roles. Still, I nodded once. Quiet. Simple. Honest. The whole yard seemed to inhale at the same time. And in that long, frozen moment, I realized the burn on my skin was nothing compared to the sting of my family finally seeing who I really was, and who they had chosen to be. My mother stood there, trying to pull herself together, but her face kept twitching like she couldn't decide whether to defend herself or pretend nothing had happened. Before she could speak, Aaron shifted his attention toward Madison. His voice stayed steady, but everyone could feel the tension in the air. Madison's smile had already faded, and she looked confused, like she sensed something heavy was about to hit her. Aaron didn't drag it out. He simply said that the scholarship Madison always bragged about, the one she claimed was awarded because of her grades and charm, wasn't a scholarship at all. It was me. I had paid off her entire student loan balance. The $28,000 she celebrated clearing so early wasn't a miracle or luck. It was my bank transfer. Madison froze. It was like watching a tower collapse in slow motion. For years she carried this story about being the fortunate, one in the family, the one opportunities naturally gravitated toward. She liked telling people she earned her way with her talent and positivity. Hearing the truth in front of all those guests cracked that image instantly. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. Her eyes darted between me and Aaron, as if hoping one of us would say it was all a misunderstanding. No one did. Her shoulders dropped, and her confidence slipped away. She looked smaller, unsure, maybe even embarrassed. It wasn't anger. It was the shock of realizing the world she believed in wasn't real. She had always been treated as the center of the family, but the foundation of that role had been built on support she never even knew she had. And now, hearing it publicly, she had no idea what to do with that information. Nearby, Bradley was watching everything with a very different expression. A few minutes earlier, he had played the worried fiancé, trying to comfort Madison while stealing annoyed glances at the chaos. But when Aaron mentioned the loan payoff, his face changed completely. His eyes sharpened, and he looked at me with a type of interest that wasn't warm or grateful. It was calculating, almost like a businessman evaluating a profitable deal. He stared at me for a moment too long, clearly trying to piece together what this meant. If Madison's education had been quietly handled by me, what else had I done? What else did I have? The gears were turning in his head, and he didn't bother to hide it. His smile returned, not directed at Madison, but straight at me. It felt wrong. Cold. Opportunistic. Madison didn't notice. She was caught in her own shock. She whispered, "You paid that." Her voice was thin, confused, almost childlike. I didn't respond. There was nothing for me to explain. I had done it because it felt right at the time, not for recognition or praise. But now, in this moment, the truth sat between us like a wall she never knew existed. My mother finally tried to say something, but her voice cracked. She had always compared us, always insisted Madison had earned everything while I was too serious. Hearing the truth exposed not only her favoritism, but the lie she had helped build. The crowd stayed silent. No one rushed to defend her. No one comforted Madison. Everyone simply watched as the golden child stood there, stripped of the myth that had followed her for years. And for the first time that night, I saw my sister not as the girl who was always chosen, but as someone who suddenly realized she had never actually stood on her own. People were still whispering about the truth Aaron had already revealed, but he wasn't finished. The tension around us grew heavier, like everyone sensed something bigger was coming. He stood a little straighter, keeping one arm around me, and looked directly at my mother. Catherine's face was pale, her breathing uneven, but she tried to hold on to whatever control she thought she still had. Aaron spoke calmly, but his words carried across the yard. He explained that the picture people had of me, someone who worked a regular job, lived in a small condo, and drove a simple car, was only part of who I was. The rest of it had stayed hidden because I wanted it that way. Then he said it clearly. I wasn't just a finance worker. I was a silent partner in a major venture capital firm, the kind that backed huge startups and turned small investments into massive returns. A stunned hush moved through the crowd. Some people blinked, others leaned forward slightly, trying to make sure they heard him right. Even my father looked confused, as if he'd missed entire chapters of my life. My mother's mouth dropped open, and she grabbed the back of a chair like she needed support. Aaron didn't hesitate. He went on to explain that the inheritance from my grandmother, money everyone thought I simply saved, had been invested years ago. I didn't just put it in a bank. I studied the markets, made careful decisions, and grew that money far beyond what anyone imagined. What started as a small family gift turned into a fortune because I had worked hard for years, quietly and without drawing attention. Guests exchanged looks. Some seemed impressed, others uncomfortable. Bradley's eyes almost sparkled with greed, like he had just discovered a treasure map. Madison stared at me, as if trying to recognize a version of me she had never taken the time to know. But Aaron wasn't finished. He explained why I kept my lifestyle simple. It wasn't because I lacked ambition or success. It was because I knew exactly how people could change when they sensed money. I didn't want fake affection or people attaching themselves to me for the wrong reasons. I liked peace. I liked privacy. I liked knowing the relationships in my life were real. So I lived quietly, choosing security over attention. My mother swallowed hard. All her angry words from moments earlier suddenly looked ridiculous. She had called me selfish, useless, ungrateful. And now she was standing in front of everyone, exposed as the one who had been blind and cruel. She opened her mouth as if to speak, but all that came out was a choked breath. Then her eyes rolled back. She collapsed right there on the patio, falling straight into my father's arms. A few people rushed forward, but most just stared in stunned silence. It wasn't just shock. It was the realization that everything she believed about me had been shattered in seconds. I didn't move. I didn't speak. I simply stood there, the burn on my face still stinging, while the rest of the truth settled over the party like thick smoke. They had never really known me, and now they couldn't pretend anymore. Aaron guided me out of the backyard while people were still whispering and staring. My cheek throbbed from the burn, but the bigger pain sat heavy inside me. Leaving the house felt like stepping out of a storm, but the echo of everything that happened followed us to the car. Aaron kept checking on me, making sure the burn didn't worsen, and once we reached home, he helped me clean the area gently. The cold compress eased the sting, but the emotional mess inside me felt raw and tangled. I sat quietly, trying to breathe through the shock of how fast the night had collapsed. After a while, Aaron handed me my phone. It buzzed nonstop, lighting up again and again. I didn't want to look, but curiosity pulled me toward the screen. The first messages were from my mother, dramatic voice notes and long paragraphs pretending to worry about me, insisting everything had been misunderstood. The same woman who threw hot coffee at my face was suddenly calling me her dear daughter. I felt sick reading it. Then there were texts from my father. His messages weren't angry, just heavy with pressure. He wrote that I should come over and talk things out as a family, and that I should understand my mother didn't mean it. It was the same pattern I'd grown up with, him smoothing everything over, hoping I'd let it slide again. Madison's messages were confused and panicked. She kept asking why I never told her anything, why I hid so much, why everything came out like that. There was no apology, just shock. It was obvious she still didn't fully understand what had happened or how much I had done for her. Then there was Bradley's text. His message was short and unbelievably bold. He wrote that he wanted to discuss potential business synergies and see if we could explore mutual opportunities. I stared at the screen in disbelief. Even after all the chaos, he was thinking about money and connections. Not Madison. Not the disaster he helped create. Just my bank account. If I needed a reminder of why I kept my life private, that message was it. The texts kept coming, cousins, aunts, people who rarely spoke to me suddenly sending questions, advice, or fake sympathy. The noise became too much. I turned off the phone and set it aside. My whole body felt drained, like I had been holding my breath for hours. Later that night, after I calmed down a little, Aaron sat beside me and asked what I wanted to do next. No pressure. No expectations. Just support. I told him I didn't want to talk to anyone in my family for a while. I needed space to think. I needed room to breathe without being pulled in every direction. With his encouragement, and after speaking briefly with my therapist, who reminded me I didn't owe anyone instant forgiveness, I decided to set a clear boundary. I wrote one short message addressed to the family group chat. The words were simple but firm. I said I needed time, and there would be no contact until I was ready. No visits. No calls. No guilt. I hit send. For the first time that night, I felt a small, steady sense of control. My sister Madison came to my apartment one evening, not to say sorry, but to question me. She looked around like she was seeing my place for the first time. She asked why I never told her about my work, my position, or the life I had built. Her voice wasn't angry. It was confused, almost suspicious. I told her I didn't hide anything. She simply never asked. For years, she was so wrapped up in our mother's approval that she never noticed anything outside that bubble. The talk grew heavy fast. She acted like she deserved access to every part of my life, just because we were family. I kept my tone calm, but inside I felt the old familiar pressure. The same feeling I had growing up when I was expected to shrink so she could shine. Madison kept insisting she didn't understand how I managed everything on my own. It wasn't a compliment. It felt like she believed I wasn't capable unless someone guided me. I reminded her that I built my life step by step, without any help from home. She didn't respond. She just stared at the floor, thinking hard, maybe for the first time. A few days later, something happened that changed everything. I was finishing paperwork at the office when Bradley, her fiancé, walked in without warning. He leaned against my desk with that smug smile he always carried. He said he admired women who weren't lost in looks, but knew how to win in real life. His tone made my skin crawl. He wasn't complimenting me. He was testing boundaries, seeing how far he could push. I told him to leave. He didn't move. Before I could say anything else, the door opened. Madison stepped inside. Her eyes widened as she heard his words. For a moment, no one spoke. Bradley tried to laugh it off, pretending he was joking, but the damage was done. She didn't buy it. She looked between us, and the truth hit her so fast that her face drained of color. It was the first time she truly saw the man she planned to marry. She didn't scream or cause a scene. She just stood there, quiet, realizing how many signs she had ignored. I could see the pain settle on her shoulders, heavy and real. This wasn't the kind of hurt you shake off in a day. It was the kind that forces you to rethink your whole world. Madison walked out without saying another word. Bradley followed her, still trying to twist everything into something harmless. But she didn't look back. Later that night, she texted me. It was short, but it said more than anything she said earlier. She admitted she saw everything clearly now. She said she needed time to understand how she let things get this far. For the first time in years, it felt like she was opening her eyes, not just to Bradley, but to the truth about our family, our mother, and even herself. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't forgiveness. But it was the first real step she ever took on her own. My dad, Thomas, came to my door one evening holding a small suitcase. I froze when I saw him because he rarely visited anyone without warning. He looked tired, older than I remembered, and there was no anger in his face. Just quiet sadness. When I opened the door, he didn't waste time with excuses. He simply said he was there to talk to me, not for my mother and not to fix anything for her. He wanted to speak for himself. We sat on the couch, and for a while he didn't say a word. Then he apologized. Not the kind of apology that feels empty or forced. This one came out slowly, like it had been sitting inside him for years. He admitted he watched my mother push me aside again and again, and he did nothing. He said he always convinced himself staying silent kept the peace, but now he understood silence had caused more harm than any argument could have. He said he didn't realize how deep the damage went until everything finally fell apart. He kept looking down at his hands, like he didn't deserve to look at me directly. He confessed he should have defended me a long time ago. He should have made sure I felt seen, not treated like an afterthought. He said he knew exactly what kind of home I grew up in, and he let it happen because he didn't want to make waves. Hearing him say all of this out loud made me feel emotions I didn't expect. I had spent so long believing he didn't notice anything, but now I understood he noticed everything. He just never acted. Then he told me something that shocked me. He said he had moved out of the house. He packed his things and walked out because he couldn't live under the same roof with my mother anymore. Not after seeing how far she had gone. Not after realizing how much she had encouraged the favoritism and the constant pressure. He said he couldn't look at himself in the mirror, knowing he stayed quiet for so long. Leaving was the only way he could start over and face the truth about the kind of husband and father he had been. He wasn't asking me to forgive him. He wasn't trying to win me over. He just wanted to take responsibility for the person he allowed himself to become. Hearing him speak, that honestly felt strange, almost unreal. In my family, real conversations never happened. Everything was covered up, softened, or ignored. But here he was, sitting in my living room with a suitcase at his feet, admitting everything he had avoided for years. For the first time, I felt real support from someone in my own family. Not because they needed something from me, not because they were trying to fix their own image, but because they genuinely cared. My dad didn't come to justify anything. He came to tell the truth. And that simple act was something I had wanted my whole life, even when I didn't admit it out loud. It didn't erase the past, but it opened a door I never expected. A chance to finally build a real connection with him, one based on honesty instead of silence. Aaron and I kept planning our small lighthouse wedding just the way we wanted. It felt peaceful and honest, nothing fancy, nothing loud. After months of chaos with my family, it was nice to focus on something that felt calm and real. We chose simple details, kept the guest list tiny, and made decisions without worrying about anyone's opinion. For once, my life felt like it belonged to me. But my mother couldn't stay away. When guilt didn't pull me back to her, she tried something new. She suddenly became sweet. She started sending little gifts to my apartment: flowers, candles, a necklace that didn't fit my style at all. Each delivery came with a note about how she was working on herself and going to therapy. None of her messages mentioned what she had actually done. It was all surface-level charm, like she thought a few pretty words could erase everything. At first, I ignored the gifts. I didn't want to start a fight, and I didn't want to give her hope that things were back to normal. But the more I stayed quiet, the bolder she became. Soon she was texting me long messages about how a mother belongs at her daughter's wedding. She tried to make it sound like she was worried about me, but every sentence circled back to her image. She kept mentioning how people would talk if she wasn't there, how the family would question her, how it would look if the mother of the bride wasn't invited. Not once did she bring up the way she had treated me. Eventually, she stopped pretending and went straight to demanding. She told me she expected an invitation because it was her right. She said the wedding would reflect badly on her if she didn't attend. It was never about love, never about understanding, never about repairing anything. It was only about appearances. That was when I realized I couldn't avoid the conversation anymore. I had to be clear, not for her, but for myself. So I called her. My hands shook a little, but my voice stayed steady. She started the call with exaggerated enthusiasm, pretending everything had already been forgiven. She acted like she was waiting for me to apologize for keeping her out of the loop. I let her talk until she ran out of breath. Then I told her the truth in the simplest way I could. I told her she was not invited to my wedding. There was silence on her end for a long moment, like she couldn't believe I finally said no without hesitation. She pushed back immediately, asking how I could do this to her, asking what she was supposed to tell people. I didn't argue. I didn't defend myself. I didn't explain the past again. I only said the line that had been sitting quietly inside me since that awful day. You threw away your invitation with that cup of coffee. After that, I ended the call. My heart felt strangely light. There was no guilt, no doubt, only clarity. For the first time in my life, I chose myself completely. Madison showed up at my place one afternoon, looking nothing like the confident girl who once believed the world should bend around her. She wasn't dressed up, her hair wasn't curled, and there was no dramatic sigh ready on her lips. She looked tired but honest, and for the first time in a long while, she didn't seem to be carrying our mother's voice inside her. She sat down carefully on my couch, almost like she wasn't sure she was welcome. Instead of asking for money, she asked if I could look over a business idea she'd been working on. She wanted to start her own event planning company, something she'd dreamed about quietly for years, but never had the courage to pursue. I was surprised, but I listened. As she explained her thoughts, I noticed something different. She wasn't expecting me to fix everything or hand her a shortcut. She wanted guidance, not a free ride. That alone made the conversation feel new. For years, she had leaned on the idea that someone else would solve her problems. Usually me. Now she was trying to stand on her own feet. As we talked, old memories came up. Not in a dramatic or painful way, just simple truths we had ignored. She admitted she never understood how much pressure our mother put on me because she was too busy trying to meet her own expectations. I told her how it felt to always be the backup plan, the one expected to sacrifice quietly. We didn't blame each other. We just talked, maybe for the first time as two adults who had finally stopped pretending. I agreed to help her shape her business plan, but I made something clear. I would mentor her, not fund her. I wanted her to build something she could be proud of, something that was hers from the start. She accepted that without hesitating. That one simple nod told me she truly had changed. Over the next few weeks, we met often. Sometimes at my place, sometimes at a small cafe near her apartment. She showed me early sketches of logos, lists of potential clients, and ideas for packages she could offer. I gave advice where I could and stepped back when I needed to. I didn't want to take control. I wanted her to learn what she was capable of. As her confidence grew, so did our bond. The tension that had always lived between us faded piece by piece. Without our mother's influence pushing us apart, we were finally able to see each other clearly. She wasn't the spoiled golden child I used to resent. She was just a woman who had been shaped by the same broken home I came from. One evening, after we finished reviewing her budgeting plan, I asked her something I hadn't planned. I asked her to stand beside me at my wedding as my maid of honor. Her eyes filled immediately, and she didn't even try to hide it. She nodded, then hugged me with a warmth I hadn't felt from her since we were little. In that moment, the hurt from the past didn't disappear, but it felt lighter. I realized some forms of revenge don't come from cutting people out. Sometimes the strongest revenge is creating something good that was never supposed to exist. My mother spent years turning us against each other. Rebuilding that relationship was something she never expected, and something she could no longer control. The morning of the wedding felt calm, almost surreal. The lighthouse stood against the horizon, waves gently lapping below, and the air smelled faintly of salt and flowers. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of everything that had come before, the anger, the chaos, the pain, and realizing that now none of it controlled me. Today was mine. I was surrounded by people who genuinely cared about me, who had been there through every step, and their smiles made my heart lighter than it had ever felt. Aaron squeezed my hand, a silent reminder that we had built this life together, brick by brick, without the interference of others. As we waited for the ceremony to begin, I glanced around. My father stood quietly, but his eyes told the story of a man who had finally learned to act with honesty and pride. He walked me down the aisle, his grip steady, his smile soft and genuine. I felt a rush of gratitude for him, for finally being present not as a passive observer, but as someone who had chosen to be on my side. During the reception, he gave a toast that brought tears to my eyes. He spoke about my journey, the strength it had taken to stand up for myself, and the woman I had become. His words weren't about regrets or guilt. They were about pride, hope, and recognition. It was the first time I truly felt that my achievements and my boundaries mattered to someone in my family. Then Madison stepped up. She had changed too, and it showed. Her speech was full of humor and honesty. She shared stories from our childhood, laughing at the ridiculous things we endured, and acknowledged, in front of everyone, my quiet generosity, my strength, and how much I had done for her without asking for credit. I laughed and cried at the same time, feeling the layers of resentment lift with each word. This wasn't just her praise. It was a genuine moment of connection, a public acknowledgement that we were finally equals. Later, Aaron and I took the dance floor. We moved slowly, hands entwined, eyes on the horizon where the sun touched the water. In that moment, I reflected on everything I had endured and the revenge I had quietly exacted. Not through anger, but by living fully, by setting boundaries, and by choosing love on my own terms. The coffee stain on my dress, once a symbol of humiliation and pain, now felt like a mark of my resilience. I had survived, grown, and reclaimed my life. As we danced, laughter and music surrounding us, I realized that the life I had built was my true victory. I was free, respected, and loved, not by money or status, but by the people who truly mattered. For the first time, I felt whole. Do you think I made the right choice by cutting my mother and setting boundaries with my family, or should I have given them another chance? I'm really curious to hear your thoughts in the comments.